so much again for joining me on this channel. As always, I'm very grateful for all your previous views, likes, subscriptions and shares. For today, I thought we would look at Christianity and the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes sum up what it is like to live as a Christian and being part of God's family. Beatitudes are a core part of Christian thinking and can be found in the Bible in the book of Matthew. Matthew is one of the 4 Gospels. Gospel means good news. And for Christians, they contain the teachings, the life and the adventures of Jesus. The good news that they're referring to is how his teachings can bring people closer to God. Each of the 4 Gospels can be represented with a picture. For Matthew, it's a human face. For John, it's an eagle. For Luke, it's an ox. For Mark, it's a lion. If you're going to some churches, you may see these 4 images, perhaps embedded in stained glass windows or on the side of pews. Now, at the time when the Gospels were written in the ancient Near East, animals represented divine power, something from above. However, Matthew's Gospel is represented with a human face. It represents wisdom and intelligence. The Gospel of Matthew also underscores and emphasizes that Jesus was God in human form. For Christians, God came down to walk amongst his creation. Matthew was formerly a tax collector before he became one of the 12 disciples that followed Jesus. Matthew is so keen to show his readers the humanity of Jesus that right at the start you get a genealogy, a family tree that traces Jesus all the way back to King David. The Beatitudes are part of the Sermon on the Mount. Sermon on the Mount is in the early part of Matthew. What's helpful for us to understand the Beatitudes is the context and the setting of where Jesus preached. Before Jesus began preaching though, he was in the wilderness, spending 40 days and being tempted by the devil. Interestingly enough, Moses, that great leader, was also in the wilderness, guiding the Jewish people to freedom. Moses also went up a mountain to receive the 10 commandments from God. Jesus is going up a mountain to get closer to God. The reason for this is that it shows the readers of Matthew's Gospel that in the same way that Moses had a close connection to God, so does Jesus. And if you think about it, it sort of makes sense. When you physically go up a mountain, you are literally being closer to God. And of course, in the Christian faith, that comes to an end when Jesus ascends and goes up into heaven. In the Beatitudes, the word blessed is used repeatedly. So, using my favourite trick on Google, I found out about the history of the word blessed. As you can see, it has its origins in the Latin, the Old French, until eventually in the late Middle English, we have the word beatitude. The word blessed means to be given favour, to be given something special, or it means you feel lucky to have something. When Jesus uses the word blessed in the Sermon on the Mount, the original translation is the Greek word makarios, which means the gods were blessed. In ancient Greek times, the gods were the content ones. They had the life of wonderful luxury and contentment. That's probably partly why they came to earth, because they were bored. According to Christian thinking though, Jesus turns the word makarios upside down. It's not the elite that have the blessings and the contentment. It's the lowly, the humble, those who are willing to serve, those who are willing to follow the teachings of Christ. Sorry if that was a bit waffly, but I wanted to try and put the Beatitudes into context of the author and the setting up a mountain. There are 9 Beatitudes, although I should say and be transparent with you that there are some scholars, some researchers, people I was reading up on to say technically there are 8, and the 8th one is sort of split into 2 a little bit. I'm going to keep it simple and just refer to it as 9 Beatitudes. So let's have a look at number 1. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that for every single one. That's the last time, honest. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What does it mean? Well, when Jesus says to be poor in spirit, one idea is that he's referring to being humble, to being small. In other words, Jesus is saying to his followers, you need to recognize that all good things come from God. Be open to that. And that will also bring you contentment and peace. And when Jesus says, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, He's referring to the fact that those people who are humble will be part of God's kingdom in heaven. Jesus then says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." What does it mean? Well, when we mourn something, we feel sad that something has been lost. Jesus here, though, is using it in a slightly different way. He's saying those who mourn over the sin they've committed. In Christian thinking, sin is something that destroys or wrecks your relationship with God and or other people. And Jesus is saying, if you recognize that, then you will be comforted. And on an entirely random note, I have no idea why, but when I typed in images for sin and sorrow, a thumb drive came up. If you have any idea why, please do feel to leave a comment below. Jesus then says, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." Meek's a funny word, isn't it? Well, I think a good definition is to think of a horse. Horses are really, really powerful creatures. I know very little about horses, but what I do know is that if they don't want to go anywhere or trot or gallop or whatever the correct term is, then they're not going to. It takes a very skillful rider to do that. So in the same way that a horse willingly submits to the rider, Jesus is saying as Christians, they should willingly submit to God who will guide them. Next, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. What does it mean? Well, this is an image of Themis, a Greek goddess who was in charge of justice. The Romans called her Justica. Presumably that's where we get the word justice from. Jesus says that Christians have a responsibility to fight for righteousness, whether that comes in the form of social justice, climate change, or financial fairness. Next is blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. What does it mean? Well, mercy means that you show compassion towards somebody or a group of people, despite the fact you have the power and the authority to give them a punishment. Jesus is saying, look, God is all loving and all forgiving. In exactly the same way, as followers, you should be forgiving and loving to those around you as well. Next is blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. To be pure in heart means to be selfless, to be always putting others before you. I was thinking of Star Wars Episode 1, where the young Anakin Skywalker is there on the planet Tatooine. The Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn says to his mother Shmi, "He gives without seeking reward." The young Anakin has a very giving attitude and puts others first. And that's how Christians should be interacting. Next is blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. This was kind of interesting because it seems to work on a couple of levels. First of all, you have peacemakers in the sense of perhaps reducing conflict between people. So let's say you might mediate between some friends who are having an argument. Or it might be on a slightly bigger scale where you're trying to work towards peace towards nations. There's also the view that actually it's about making peace with God. In other words, Jesus is saying to his followers, look, point others towards my teaching. And in the same way that you have peace and a content relationship with God, why don't you show others that as well? Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus says those who will follow him and his teachings will be persecuted. They will face hardships. Quite startling in a way, isn't it? But I suppose there's an honesty to it. Jesus isn't saying that following the Christian faith is going to be easy. He's being transparent with them. It's worth remembering too that Jesus himself faced great persecution and ultimately a very grisly death according to Christian thinking. So today believers could take comfort from that. And for the ninth one, or as we've already discussed earlier, some believe it's just part of number 8. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. What does it mean? Well, Jesus is effectively saying that following his teachings isn't always going to be easy. And as we know, the early church, many people faced a great deal of persecution. Open Doors are an organisation that work to highlight areas of the world where Christians face persecution. I should put a link down below. I was trying to think of ways to help me remember what the Beatitudes are about, and I very clumsily came up with this, that the Beatitudes are about being an attitude. It's not just that Jesus is saying to his followers, follow these rules and guidelines. He's also saying, look, you'll be blessed as a result. And crucially, not just the followers being blessed, but the people around them, that they show that love and positive attitude to. I have absolutely no idea if that will be of any help or use to you. I do hope so. It really pushed me in terms of putting this together, as it always does. And I just want to say thank you so much for your continued support. If you are able to, then please do like, comment and subscribe. Most importantly, though, thank you so much for watching. And as always, enjoy your learning.